Hello again, my friend. It's Pedro. I hope you're doing well. I want to officially welcome you to my new YouTube channel. You guys know I've been talking about doing this for a long time, and it's finally here. I thought the perfect time to launch was here in my favorite month of all, October, month of the prime time spooky season. I like to call it this because if you're like me, every day of the year is spooky season, but there's something really special when the summer finally starts to fade and we enter into the fall. The days are shorter, the weather gets cooler, the leaves start to change. There's that smell in the air that lets you know that autumn is here. It's just the best. And while Halloween is not the end of spooky season by any means, as I said, this is a year-round thing for people like us, but it is the pinnacle of the prime time spooky season. So what I thought I would do is share a few of my favorite October traditions that help me get the most out of this time of year. Some of my favorite spooky books, some of my favorite spooky movies, and even some of my favorite spooky hikes that I like to take around this time. I'm calling it Pedro's preparation for Halloween. And since time is of the essence, let's not waste any more. The first of my spooky October traditions that I want to share with you is a short story collection called The Halloween Store by Ronald Kelly. The Halloween Store is the perfect short story collection for the month of October, in my humble opinion. It's got 7 short stories and 2 nostalgic essays. And I am a big lover of short story collections. They really kind of get me through if a novel is dragging or if I'm in between and I don't know what to read next. But if I'm honest, I found that in a lot of short story collections, I might connect with 1 or 2 of the stories, but then there's usually a bunch that I just don't quite resonate with. And it's cool, we all resonate with different things. But what I love about the Halloween Store is every single story resonated with me. It's got everything that I'm looking for in a spooky short story collection, from ghosts and monsters, the nostalgic feel of childhood and coming of age, a strong sense of place and an atmosphere that you can feel as you're reading or listening to if you're like me and you love audiobooks, which, by the way, the narrator for this book, just so awesome. This is the perfect book to add to your collection, and it's the perfect book to read right now in prime time spooky season. And while I love every single story, I do have my favorites, so I thought I would talk about them real quick to try to convince you to add this to your list and add it right now. Let's go. The first story that I want to highlight is the title track of the collection, if you will, The Halloween Store. The story centers around 4 young friends who are ready for Halloween and eager to go trick-or-treating. Their joy and excitement is only amplified when they start to see signs around town for the new Halloween Store, a pop-up shop of sorts. And I imagine it's similar for us when we see our first spirit Halloween of the season. The Halloween Store is filled with treats, decorations, and costumes, but what really stood out to them was the cool vintage Halloween gear that they had and the mystery gift that came along with your first purchase. However, we find out that for some of the costumes that are on sale, a special waiver needs to be signed, giving the kids pause. Want to know what happens next? I know you do. You gotta read it. The Halloween Store starts off fun and cozy. It's very inviting to me. Ronald Kelly is a master storyteller, and the way he presents this atmosphere is like visiting an old friend. You can almost feel what it was like to live in this small town and to be amongst the friends who are so excited to get their costumes and so excited that Halloween is finally here again. It made me remember how I used to feel as a kid and how I felt last year because I'm celebrating Halloween for the rest of my life. Anyway, as the story unfolds, I really appreciate the way that Ronald Kelly can turn the dial on the spooky level, taking us from this cozy, nostalgic feel of our youth to get into a real place of horror. And if you're an extreme horror fan, this might not do it for you, but if you're a fan of like the classic, old school, nostalgic horror like I am, this story is just chef's kiss. It's so awesome. And I don't want to give anything away, but I will say this, with this story and with others, nobody's really safe in a Ronald Kelly story. The next story that I want to talk about is called The Cistern, and I gotta say, this is my favorite story in the entire collection. It's not the scariest and it's not the least scariest, it's kind of right down the middle for me. But again, what really stands out to me is the way that Ronald Kelly can paint a picture and bring us into the world of this story. The story follows a businessman who's taking somewhat of a random trip through his old childhood hometown, which just so happens to be in October. As he enters into the town, he's flooded with memories, recalling the days of his youth and Halloween around this time, and especially the old Halloween fair. And to his surprise, he comes to realize that they're still having it to this day. So he drives to the fair, and when he gets to the gate, he sees that there's a young kid who wants to get in but can't afford a ticket. He thinks to himself now, as a successful businessman, you know what? I could take care of this guy's ticket. So they go in, and he's hit with all of the old memories, the sights, the smells, the sounds, the vibe of the Halloween fair, and the good feelings of October. It starts off like the kind of place that you would really love to be at. The fair is just cozy and warm and inviting. But as time goes on, he starts to realize that this place might not be all that it seems. And even this kid that he brought in might not be who he claims to be. This story in particular is pretty short, pretty quick, and if you like Silent Hill vibes, spooky fairs, and kind of like space-time stuff, this is the one. And when you're done with it, you're gonna feel like you just watched an awesome movie. That's how descriptive it is. I love it, and I think you'll like it too. Check it out. Okay, so the next story I want to talk about is called Pretty Little Lanterns. In my opinion, this is the most frightening story in the entire collection. And ironically, it's the least paranormal and supernatural. It just focuses on humans. But then again, is there anything scarier than humanity? Am I right? This story takes place in a small town that has been plagued by a serial killer who strikes every Halloween. I mean, right off the bat, that's a good premise for a good spooky story, and it does not disappoint. It follows the journey of the sheriff who's trying to capture this guy, but has not had any luck. Typically what happens every Halloween is one of the jack-o'-lanterns in the community is not just a pumpkin, if you catch my meaning. This story is so frightening because it's actually quite believable. You don't have to look far in this world to hear about a murder or a crazy crime. It's everywhere. So when you hear a story like this, I think what really pulls the heart is to think this is something that could actually happen. Admittedly, I'm a big fan of the Silence of the Lambs and the whole lore of that story, especially the Hannibal show. And what I love about this story is that it feels like it could have been plucked from that series, but it's better because it's centered around Halloween and all the spooky things. This is the kind of story you may want to check your trigger warnings for because it is a wild ride, but I love it. In my opinion, this is the perfect story to read every October if you're brave enough. So there's my first recommendation for primetime spooky season. I hope you check it out and I hope you stick around. But before I go, I want to ask you, what is one of your go-to books, movies, or locations to visit for primetime spooky season? Let me know. I'd love to hear from you. There's nothing like a good spooky recommendation. And with that, we come to the end of our time together. I want to thank you for watching. I ask that you would like, share, follow, subscribe, all the things that people say at the ends of these kinds of videos. Please do that. I'll see you guys real soon because I got more things to share with you guys. Grace and peace.